Hello and welcome to Maximum Disc, a show where I celebrate physical media and talk about films that I own on Blu Ray and 4K Blu Ray. My name's James Adamson. I'm a co-host on the Double Reel Film Podcast. If you like this chat about physical media, please do check out Double Reel. It's a magazine-style podcast made by people who love the movies as much as you do. Each episode covers various themes and films, and we think you check one of them out and you'll come away with some good recommendations of things to watch, instead of just doing what the algorithm tells you. That's the sell pitch for the podcast. Let's talk about physical media now. Why does it matter? Well, short version, if you care about it, you need to own it, because you can't rely on the streaming services to make it available, or be the uncut version or the proper director's cut or extended edition that makes the film work. It's not going to look and sound the way it should if it's not on a disc with no buffering, because on an internet file it's going to be compressed and not as good. And with the lawsuits against Amazon, there's even a question over whether you truly own it if you've bought it digitally. So physical media on your shelf is the way to go. Now, hopefully you're a convert to that if you've tuned into this anyway. So what I do on each episode is I talk about one film. Just a little fireside chat, no special effects, as you can see, just me chatting away. People tune in because they want to know what the film looks and sounds like. That's the first thing, really. What's the quality? Is this a good representation of the film that they saw at the cinema and loved and all that kind of thing? I'm not the most technical, but I do try and cover that so that you get a good idea of it. I also like to talk about my relationship and background with the film, why I came to watch it, own it, love it, all of those things. And at the end, I sort of round it up and tell you whether I think it's an essential purchase in my view, and help you make your mind up to see if you'd like to buy it. Today I am talking about The Tree of Life on Blu Ray. On Blu Ray, because I don't think there's a 4K version of it around just yet. This came out in 2011, directed by Terrence Malick. Legendary since the 1970s for some sort of beloved films back then, Badlands, Days of Heaven. Took a long break, almost 20 years, and then The Thin Red Line came out in the 90s. Apparently he's independently wealthy, so he can afford to only work when he wants to. He's an art house darling. His films are quite experimental, very kind of ambient, ethereal. Other films he's made include The New World, To the Wonder, and Knight of Cups. The cast includes Brad Pitt, Jessica Chastain as a married couple in flashback. The present-day scenes feature Sean Penn as their son, with younger actors playing Sean's character and that those of his brothers in the flashback sequences back in the 1950s and 60s. It's also the acting debut for Ty Sheridan, who you would recognise from things like Ready Player One. The cinematography is by Manuel Lubezki, who has done some other Terrence Malick, but also known for things like Children of Men, Gravity, Birdman, and The Revenant. So, award-winning, top-quality cinematographer, has really done very well for himself over the years. The sound team is very large. The main people would seem to be Eric Ardal, John Pritchett, and Craig Berkey. The score is by Alexandre Desplat, who scored a wide range of films, including Benjamin Button, Zero Dark 30, Greta Gerwig's Little Women, and a number of Wes Anderson films. He won an Oscar for one of his Wes Anderson scores, Grand Budapest Hotel, then another for Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water. He also did the score for the animated film A Monkey's Tale, which played a significant but not positive role in my eldest son's film-going childhood. In terms of awards and nominations, this film got quite a lot of attention around the world, actually. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. It's that kind of a film, art house, loved by European sort of film critics and film sort of buffs. It was Oscar nominated as well for Best Picture, Best Cinematography, and Best Director. Didn't win any. The US National Society of Film Critics gave it awards for Best Director, Brad Pitt and Jessica Chastain for acting and the cinematography, and they got various awards like that and nominations like that from the various indie festivals and city-based critic societies kind of around the world. The most nominations being for Lubezki's cinematography. A quick summary of what the film's about is what I usually do. It's harder than average to do that for this film. On one level, it's about Sean Penn's character approaching middle age and having a difficult time emotionally in his own relationships. He's looking back on his childhood and how he sort of related to his parents and brothers in suburban Texas in sort of mid-20th century. Various incidents in his past reveal trauma and issues within the family, which are kind of playing on his mind now, affecting his relationships in the present day. He looks back on how different his mother and father were and how he related to each of them, which one he was more like, which one he wanted to be more like. At the same time, The film's also a meditation on sort of wider kind of life itself, on the birth of the universe, the creation of Earth, the beginning of life, including dinosaurs, which feature briefly in the film, and then also looking ahead billions of years from now to when dying stars collapse in and the universe ceases to exist. So kind of huge themes around quite a small personal story, which I think some aspects of it are semi-autobiographical at least. The title, The Tree of Life, this is a concept that it's been referenced in religion, various mythology, spiritual writing, and science in different ways, but it all relates to a kind of universal view of how life came to be and where we all fit into the bigger picture kind of thing, which I think is what this film is more broadly about. My background with the film is I was aware of Terrence Malick initially from his 70s films. Badlands is like one of the archetypal road movies with Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek, which was hugely sort of influential. The music was quite sort of iconic and borrowed along with other themes by Tarantino for True Romance. So that's kind of a real touch point for a lot of filmmakers and people who grew up then. And Days of Heaven is this incredibly beautiful film about quite horrible people, but it clearly shows his real aptitude for whatever human story he's telling, placing it in nature and showing you what the countryside and life around the human world is like. And he was this kind of, mythical reclusive figure because, like I said, he's independently wealthy from money he's inherited from his family, doesn't need to work if he doesn't want to. And it looks like he just decided he didn't like the way things were going in the late 70s. It was the end of the auteur era, and he just decided he was going to go off and do his own thing, live in France, occasionally script doctor for people, and only come back when he wanted to, which was in 1998. And I watched that shortly after it came out, rented it on video, and it was kind of a counterpoint film, as I recall, to Saving Private Ryan, which was the big war film of the year. Thin Red Line was similar in that it was a war film, highly regarded, with lots of big name stars, but set in the Pacific, Guadalcanal or one of those places. And I wasn't completely wowed by the Thin Red Line, even though it was a highly regarded film at the time. But there were things I liked, and it was a very beautiful film to look at. It's a good film to give you an indication of his style. Part of his approach is people saying, in voiceover what they're thinking, rather than saying it out loud. And a lot of focus on the physical and natural world around the story and characters that tells you something about what he's trying to say. In that case, focusing on the physical world of the Pacific Islands that the war is happening on shows you the destructive impact of war, that all the people focused on their various individual stories or the war stories, their side stories, they seem to have forgotten. So, not for everyone, but very visually beautiful, and some people think this is the absolute bee's knees. So that's what I understood about Terrence Malick. Why I bought this film is bought a Blu Ray player, upgrading from the DVD player. I was very excited about all my films are going to look so much better now, so I was watching all my old DVDs to see how they were being upscaled. And I was also looking around at the time to say, well, what Blu-rays are out there that will really show off my system, and the 5.1 speakers and all of that. So I was looking around that. And this was, when you look online, one of those things, this is a visually impressive film, you should really get it. So I blind bought it on the basis that the visuals would be really good and it'd be good to see on my, high definition kind of, home cinema equipment. And then I ended up just not watching it for years and years. It sat on my shelf gathering dust because I think I was somewhat, worried by the fact that Terrence Malick is a very divisive filmmaker. I could have picked it up and put it on any time I wanted. I just had a bit of a mental block about it. But eventually I decided, no, I should watch this. And eventually I did, partly for the podcast that I've been talking about, watching films that I've been, missing out on for ages and have just been sitting on my shelf. And I also thought it'd be a good time to do it, now on Maximum Disc. So what did I think of the film? That's as hard to describe in a way as what the film's about, because I went in after years of it sitting on my shelf, over a decade really, with all sorts of thoughts about, some people thought this was a work of absolute genius, whereas other people thought it was a load of pretentious rubbish, and that seems to be the dividing line on all Terrence Malick films. And I thought, what's this going to be? I've heard stories about it contains this or that, no one knows what some of it means. So I kind of just sat down with as open a mind as I possibly could and said, well, let's see this. And there was stuff about it that I really liked, stuff I didn't really understand. And in the end, I thought I did enjoy a lot of it. The picture of the childhood of the boys and the challenges in the family and all of that stuff made a lot of sense. It has a kind of very dreamy vibe to it, which maybe I was in the right mood for on that day, which I did enjoy. I don't know how necessary or important all of the other bits, like a wounded dinosaur being tended to by another dinosaur and pictures of stars collapsing. I thought it made sense to me on the basis that, if you're thinking about all the problems in your life, maybe it also occurs to you at the same time that we're all just a blink of an eye in the wider scheme of things in the universe or since life began. So I kind of rationalised it like that, but I don't think rationalising it is the point, in a way that it is really kind of quite an ambient film that I wouldn't say I was wowed by it and became an absolute Terrence Malick convert, but I do think the film was very beautiful to look at, and I was interested in the story and kept going all the way to the end and did feel like it had some value for me. So I don't want to sound lukewarm about it, but I think it is kind of a bit of an unusual film to just say, oh, I love this, I didn't love it. I certainly can't see why you would hate it or find it horrible, but I think if you sit down watching a film expecting it to tell you very clearly what it's about, you might find it very frustrating. But I also thought that it was a very kind of affecting film with some of the powerful images and scenes, and I thought it's well acted by people who really were getting across the story of like trying to deal with your family issues. So, okay, yeah, it made sense and it didn't, and I didn't mind too much when it didn't. Let me put it that way. So let's talk about the disc. This is the 2011 original Blu Ray edition with no real frills. It's just a single disc containing the film on Blu Ray. It's a pretty decent package in terms of the quality of the film. It's a nice big thick disc with lots of room for the film. There's a good bit rate. The only real extra is a making of documentary, which is quite substantial. Note that in 2017 this was superseded by a 4K Criterion remaster. But let's just say it's not a 4K Blu-ray. It's just they did a Blu-ray based on a proper full 4K, restoration of the negative, and that because it's Criterion will have booklets and articles and extras, far beyond this. So I think if you're already a fan of the film, that might be a stronger edition for you. But this one is the watch the film to kind of get the feeling what the film's like. I certainly don't think a recent film that was given a good Blu-ray sort of release, I don't feel like there was anything particularly deficient in the version that it did. But Criterion likes to do kind of new and improved versions of things. So I'm talking purely about that original kind of image, which there are articles comparing the two, but I haven't seen both, so I couldn't tell you about that. So what about the video of this film? Well, as you'd expect, it's absolutely beautiful. It's filmed on. It's not really filmed on anything like IMAX or 70mm or anything. It's shot on film, with some use of digital to help with special effects and to get the visual image across. But certainly, I think things like the flashback scenes of suburban Texas with lots of sunlight through trees, that's on film, and you do feel that rich texture to it all. And it is absolutely beautiful. Terrence Malick spends years getting his films to look absolutely just right, and this Blu-ray is a very good reproduction of that. Like I say, it's got this ambient, dreamlike feel which comes across in these images. I think, what do you have? You've got sort of present-day scenes, and a lot of that's in skyscrapers, which look very inhuman compared to the natural world that Terrence Malick's filming. But obviously, they're shot very beautifully. There's shots of the buildings against like a backdrop of the sky or whatever limited nature is around. That's very well shot. There's lots of scenes of like them in green lawns and out in the woods, and generally having what looks on the face of it to be quite an idyllic childhood in some quite nice looking part of Texas, beautifully filmed, great lighting, lots of beautiful light and shadow on the houses and on the actors, really sort of giving off that image of this is all a kind of a slightly dreamlike flashback in Sean Penn's mind, I would say. Absolutely beautiful, stunning to look at. And all the special effects and everything, which I think he brought in Douglas Trumbull of 2001 and Blade Runner fame to make sure those special effects really worked. I mean, there's a collapsing star, there's dinosaurs and, pictures of planets and stuff. And that does look really good. So it absolutely cannot fault how amazing the video looks. Would a 4K be better? No doubt. Is the 2017 remaster better? Maybe, but I mean, it was a pretty fresh negative that they did for the Blu-ray. So I mean, I can't see how it would be a lot better than this. It looks really, really, really good. I don't know if we're ever going to get 4K, by the way. So it might be, tiny, tiny differences between this and any future edition of the video. I think it's really very good. I think it comes across the way Malick must have intended. The sound, similar. It's got a 7:1 mix here. As I understand it, they switched that down to a 5:1 mix for the Criterion. Not sure why. Maybe they felt it was just a better, clearer mix. Maybe they felt not a lot of people have 7 speakers these days. Don't know. I don't have 7 speakers, but I mean, I've got enough kind of sound sort of equipment to cope with like a pretty powerful kind of mix on a film. This, I would say, is well managed, very clear, very, very good quality. It's mostly not a hugely challenging film for sound. I mean, there are a couple of bombastic moments. A meteor does hit the Earth and the universe dies, so that's pretty powerful. But on the whole, it's quite a quiet film. But then on a quiet film, you want to make sure that everything's coming across quite clearly and very well brought out. You want to hear the dialogue. You want, if someone's whispering and there's the wind and there's like people playing in the background, you want each of those sounds to be well isolated so they're clear to you when you're watching it. And I think this is really good. It's really, really nicely managed sound. Once again, I think because this is only the standard Blu Ray, I'm not sure I'd want to invest in a more expansive or lavish package than that. I just wanted to watch the film. And I think the sound, like the vision, is a good representation of what Malick was trying to do. It sounds great, when it needs to, and, doesn't get in the way. Given, though, that the ambient nature of this film and its story and everything is that you could almost watch it with the sound turned off, I don't know how much of a high priority the sound was for Terrence Malick. However, he's clearly got a lot of attention to detail, so when you do have the sound on, it's absolutely spot on. So the quality of the sound and vision is absolutely great, and a good representation of the original film, which, for those of you who are fans of Terrence Malick, that'll be good news. For those of you who just want a film to look and sound good, also good news. Overall, I still don't know entirely how I feel about this film. Could I just as easily have put a really good Richard Attenborough nature documentary on? One of the ones where you have scenes of people walking through the city and seeing how like urban images in the present day like conflict with nature. Maybe, but I did find the story compelling. The actual story of the characters and their lives and growing up and all the emotions compelling as well. So I do think it was worth watching. Is it an essential purchase? Well, I think that depends, because if you're an absolute diehard Terrence Malick fan, then yes, it is. I think it's one of his best films. I think, I still think his 70s work is his peak, but that, he's done some really amazing stuff, visually, and he's very ambitious. He's trying to tell stories in a really interesting way, and he's really got this idea of like this, telling you the whole story of the world at the same time as telling you a small human story. And I think it's very interesting. You've got a filmmaker who's looking to do that. But I think there are people who would find this film to be absolute pretentious nonsense. So it does sort of depend how much you like Terrence Malick. I would say, though, that if you're just interested, or you're interested enough in films that look and sound great, and having something that's more or less reference quality for your equipment, then I think this is a very good film to be putting on your home cinema. So kind of mixed, and it does depend how much you like Terrence Malick. Also, depending on what kind of physical media buyer you are, if you're buying it now, and I bought it beforehand, but if you're buying it now, that Criterion collection, if you can still find it, might be the better one. I don't even know if they released it in the UK, actually. It might be US only. So, but in your region, if that's available, you might prefer that if you like all the extras. But I thought this was a very good representation of the original film. So that's what I thought of The Tree of Life. I hope you enjoyed that review. I hope to help you make your mind about whether to buy it or find out more about Terrence Malick as a result. As always, please check out Double Reel podcast if you like this chat about physical media. You get lots more of our views of the world and of film and everything else. But in any event, please do come back soon for more physical media chat right here on Maximum Disc. The Maximum Disc YouTube channel is brought to you by Double Reel, the monthly magazine podcast for the discerning film nerd. If you like our celebration of physical media, please check out the podcast for more chat about the films we love and hate.